Thank you. Can you hear me well? I hope everybody can hear me well. So, very good afternoon from Thailand, a country of excellent logistics. Uh, could not have been a more suitable place to connect you from. But I'm also very sorry that I was not able to join you all in person and missed out attending this day-long, very timely and excellent event and initiative organized by the Nordic Chamber of Commerce and Industries, NCCI, and the three Nordic embassies. So, excellencies, distinguished participants, and a very respected panelists and panel members. A very good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum to everybody. Welcome you all to this final session before the closing of today's day-long session, which is on as part of this logistic initiative, logistics in FDI. This last session, as the MC mentioned, is on policies as well as the road ahead, including the roadmap. I welcome you all to this final session before we head into the closing formalities of today's excellent initiative. We had already had scheduled about 60 minutes for this very important session. But I think we have lost a few minutes. I think we are edging closer to the end of the day. So for the next about 35 to 40 minutes, we will hear from this very distinguished set of panelists we have on the stage. And after that, we will have about 10 to 15 minutes, time permitting up to 15 minutes, but certainly a 10 minutes session, giving the floor to the audience for their comments, questions, suggestions, and so on. On the stage, we have a very diversely rich set of panelists who are relevant to this whole agenda of logistics. A very dear, all of them very dear faces to me. I would like to highlight that Rear Admiral Shahjahan, you are the only policymaker and the regulator in this panel. So it is extremely important for the whole room to hear from you, and also for you to get the perspectives of the private sector, both the local and the foreign investors we have on the stage. So as part of very conscious design, we will bring you as the last speaker of the panel, because this will enable you to hear the views, the suggestions, and the insights of the logistics users, both from the Bangladesh private sector as well as from the foreign investors community, so that it gives you a chance to respond to those and as well as share your thoughts in light of the issues they highlight. Logistics, I think the sector is important, requires no introduction or no sort of new introduction. It is a critical sector for Bangladesh to enable its journey towards the 2041 vision, where it wants to be a high-income country. For that, manufacturing needs to expand significantly. Export diversification needs to happen. Bangladesh needs to attain, which has done well, but it needs to do even better in developing its trade GDP ratio. And even in the domestic sector, expanding into new economic bases such as agribusiness, e-commerce. For all of these, logistics will remain as a critical enabler, and the development of the sector to the level of a middle-income country and beyond is going to be critical for Bangladesh in order to attain its growth aspirations. And FDI is going to be important not only to develop the sector in terms of its capacity, but also to access technology, the access know-how, because big part of logistics is infrastructure, but also a big part of logistics going forward is going to be technology, digitalization. I know there was a session on digitalization, capital-intensive sector, and green logistics will be the demand for the next decades. So altogether, foreign private participation to join hands with the excellent set of local investors, private sector Bangladesh has, are going to be critical. So from that perspective, this session, which will focus on policies and how the private sector, local and foreign, can help the government move forward towards a conducive enabling environment for this logistics, right policies, right regulatory and legal framework, and enforcement of such framework is going to be the focus of this session. So with that, let me turn to the first panelist of today's session, Mr. Abul Kasem Khan, a director of AK Khan Group, a group which has been engaged in logistics for some time, but also as the chairperson and board member of BILD, Business Initiative Leading Development. Mr. Khan had the opportunity and has actually contributed significantly in developing the logistics policy debate and bringing in the government into the whole policy discourse around logistics. Now, Mr. Khan, we know that this sector is a critical sector from many perspectives, and but this sector also has many important subsectors. I mean, there is warehousing, there is trade transportation, there is port, most importantly, there are inland container service, and so on. In order to align the logistics development to the national priorities of Bangladesh and to ensure there is coordinated and holistic development and effective enforcement, do you think Bangladesh will benefit from development of a logistics policy, national logistics policy? And if so, what are the important areas that such a policy should focus on? So over to you, Mr. Khan, for next 6 to 7 minutes. You have 7 minutes, and I will, come in perhaps 30 seconds before the time ends. Over to you, Mr. Khan.
Thank you, Dr. Masrur Reaz. First of all, I'd like to thank the Nordic Chamber for organizing this very important and timely initiative. The simple answer is yes. The National Logistic Plan or policy would benefit Bangladesh. And when we were framing the policy framework with the help of the Prime Minister's office, the vision, we set a vision. The vision is to create a logistic ecosystem that is world-class. That is the vision. Now, in order for, we all know that Bangladesh lacks very basic logistic infrastructure. If you look at from the port perspective to the warehousing, we are not at par in terms of our national need. So the National Logistic Plan would first of all coordinate, become a focal point, because I think the focus is not there. It's segmented. Each ministry is handling a particular segment of the logistic ecosystem. So first of all, the national plan would bring about a focal point. And one of the recommendations is to ultimately create a logistic ministry. We think that Bangladesh needs to create, because the ultimate goal is to create a world-class logistic. Secondly, Bangladesh's location, a gateway between South Asia and Southeast Asia, a natural gateway, but we want to make it a transport, manufacturing, and a logistic hub for the region, which would connect the two South Asia to Southeast Asia. As you know, ASEAN countries are very near Bangladesh. China is also near, and India is just next to us. So we, in terms of a country competitiveness, we think that logistic infrastructure development would create country competitiveness. And in order, as I mentioned, to create the enabling environment is also important, because we need ample amount of investment, both from public and private sector. Private sector engagement is not at par with other countries. In fact, through our committee this year, very promising news is that logistics was considered as a service sector. This year, under the industrial policy of Bangladesh, which is being drafted now, we have been able to declare, or they will be declaring, logistics as an industry and as an export sector driver. So that would bring about a lot of incentives, we are hoping, and also the incentives that are given to the to the export market would also come to the logistics sector. So logistics is being considered a very important sector by the public policy planners, and the support that we are getting from the Prime Minister's office is just amazing. I am the co-chair of the Logistic Infrastructure Development Committee, It's a public-private dialogue platform where the Honorable Senior Secretary of the Prime Minister's Office is the chair. I'm the co-chair. So he is driving the entire initiative. And we hope to come up with the plan very soon. And the objective is, Masrur, is to create country competitiveness and also be an enabler or a catalyst for Bangladesh to accelerate its development pace. I would end here, Masrur.
No, Mr. Khan, I think this is really very encouraging. I mean, I'm very appreciative of the role that you, the leadership role that you played as the co-chair of the logistics working group, but also as a business leader, a former president of Dhaka Chamber and a chair of BGMEA, which got, as I mentioned, the Prime Minister's office or the government into this policy discourse that you got them to think that this is a sector which required a recognition, but also requires policy framework. And I think the advancement that you made in last one and a half year is great. But can I ask you a follow-up question, given we have a little more time left? So now that the Prime Minister's office, the government is aware of the importance of the policy or the sector, they have made a first policy recognition through the industrial policy, including logistics as a sector or recognizing logistics as a sector, and hopefully a logistics policy in next 1 year or so. What is private sector planning to do to support the government's initiative? Or as we know, often government is quite occupied, priorities shift depending on priorities for the country. So is there any plan of your logistics working group build or the chambers on associations? So how does private sector plan to pursue government and continue to help government in moving towards a policy framework? So two minutes. If
yeah, that's a very good question. We have kind of discussed this in the meetings. And in the policy framework, which we will be also incorporating in the policy to have various public-private committees. We are thinking of creating under the national policy a national logistic committee. It was initially recommended that the Honorable Prime Minister to head, but that becomes too high up in terms of the official level of communication. So we thought maybe the Honorable Finance Minister or the Commerce Minister would head the committee, supported by the various chambers and also the stakeholders and also the ministries. So these committees, under that main national committee, would be specialized committees for each subsector, where the public-private discourse will happen and the challenges or the opportunities. Actually, Masrur, we want to deep dive into each subsector, and we want to deep dive and understand what are the bottlenecks and what are the opportunities. And of course, the best practices, as you rightly mentioned, Thailand is one of the pioneers in logistic efficiency. So we would be looking forward to the best practices of countries that are having good logistics. So I think the whole idea is to keep the momentum ongoing and bring in private sector engagement in the platform, in the committees.
Thank you, Mr. Khan. I think the public-private cooperation, collaboration, and dialogue on an ongoing basis is going to be a critical success factor in taking the policy agenda forward. And as you mentioned, it is required for Bangladesh's competitiveness. Just to share some very intriguing data with the room here, Thailand for exports and imports trading across border. For import, it takes an average of 54 hours and export 55 hours. For Bangladesh, the import hours are 360 and the export hours are 315. So almost 6 times. So unless Bangladesh really, and improve its speed to market, reduce its lead time, improve its efficiency and cost, I think competitiveness is going to remain far away, and logistics is one critical way to get to that. So with that, let me thank Mr. Khan for his remarks and turn to what is the most important export sector of the country and perhaps most important manufacturing and business sector as well in terms of its contribution on employment, female empowerment, certainly exports and external sector performance of Bangladesh economy, the ready-made garment sector. And we have Mr. Asif Ashraf from the Bangladesh Garment Manufacturers and Exporters Association, BGMEA, who's also managing director of a very large garment group, Urmi Group. Mr. Ashraf, welcome to the session. RMG, of course, again, like the logistics sector, the sector RMG does not require any new introduction in terms of its importance, both in Bangladesh, but also in the apparel value chain in the world. And, even during the recovery of COVID, I think RMG is demonstrating its very stellar robustness, and its competitiveness that we have. But we all expect the current $40 billion from this year will soon become a $60 billion. McKinsey study a few years back anticipated a $50 billion, I think by, if I remember correctly, by 2023 or 4. And by 2041, certainly a $100 billion minimum is definitely possible, right? Now, in your experience as an RMG entrepreneur, but also as a leader of the RMG sector, how do you see the sector? How should the logistics sector develop to support the very realistic RMG growth aspiration? 60 billion, 80 billion, 100 billion in next 15 to 20 years. So where do you see the development opportunity that would enable the Bangladesh RMG sector to perhaps move from the second largest to one day the largest, certainly as one of the most competitive countries in apparel in Bangladesh? Mr. Ashraf, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Reaz. Thank you for using such good words about RMG and acknowledging the contribution in the Bangladesh and world perspective. Yes, Bangladesh has the potential. During the COVID, we were, along with everyone, we were also very skeptical about what is going to happen. But fortunate enough, and the resilient, and to some extent, I would say the bold decisions of the government for starting their factories and giving the incentives, all those fantastic mechanisms, we could turn around ourselves. And last year to this year, we have made a growth of 35%. This is humongous, actually. It's not a joke, 35% growth. Your question that how important is logistic is actually not need any answer. It is very important. You gave a comparison that Bangladesh import and export is 6 times more than the Bangkok. And because of the geographic location of Bangladesh, we are the farthest from the US, which took now about 43 to 44 days. Now it's about more than 60 days because of the inefficiency of the entire shipping sector. So there, the first challenge comes to us for catering the US market, because even if I talk about Europe, the Turkish people can send the goods in 7 days by truck. 1 day they produce, and I think when next 2-3 days, the goods are in the warehouse, where we need about 35 days. So we cannot do anything there, actually. That is a constraint we are working with. So what we can do, we can improve our efficiency in production, in handling, and in transportation. Transportation, I'm very happy to say, the co-panelist, the chairman of Chittagong Port, they have done a wonderful job in the COVID period. There is almost no congestion. I would say there is no congestion. Whatever difficulties they had, they covered it up. So it's now what we have done. When we started the factories, we were also working very efficiently. A lot of factories had to run because we were worked under a lot of restrictions that we cannot have more than 60% worker. So we invented new system running the factories in second shift and all these things. So that's how we covered. And unfortunately, during the COVID, when it was most challenging period, the demands of the customers were very high. They wanted the goods very fast. So to cater those things, we had to invent many things. But where we stuck? We stuck in the transportation from Dhaka to Chittagong, which is less than 250 kilometers. It took about 24 hours, sometimes more. In handling the goods, sometimes the trucks there's serials of trucks because the people cannot efficiently handle. So these are the points that we definitely need to work out, very importantly. Investment is one part that, as Mr. Khan said, that they're making a policy so that the investors will come and work it here. Simultaneously, whatever logistic we have now, we have to run it more efficiently. Coming back, I'm going back to the original RMG sector there now. Although we are the second largest, but unfortunately we don't have any cotton. So we have to manage two parts of the entire business supply chain. One, we have to bring the cotton. I think about 43%, I guess, comes from India. So with India, we have these land ports along with the seaports availability. Now, BGMEA is working very closely with the government to increase the capacity of Benapul. Then there are Darshana port. Then we are making we are preparing a paper for government. And in fact, government, we already submitted that they will make an ICD in west side of the Bangabandhu Setu. The trains from India, Ranaghat, will come through Darshana and unload the goods in next to Bangabandhu Setu, west side of that. So the raw materials, especially the yarn and cotton, can be there stored. So this is a part of the supply side. If we talk about the export side, yes, we need some strong support, very strong support that maybe, I'm sure we will talk about this Matabari since the chairman is here. We'll talk about the Bay Terminal. We have done efficiency, we have improved our efficiencies in Chittagong ports, and I'm sure he will do a lot for those ports by 2024, 25, and 26. There will be a lot of mother vessels will be coming, inshallah, to Matabari. But up to Matabari, it's about 350 kilometers. How many hours we need? That the government have to ensure. There should be a free track, free lane for all the transportation without any congestion, so that we can deliver those goods over there in 8 hours to 9 hours time. And there was another question which I missed, I think so much.
So no, I think you responded well to the question I had. So which areas you see as the development, holding the development prospects in the logistics sector, which you responded well. But I'd like to add for the next 2 minutes, if you can respond to a follow-up question, which is, now that we understand the importance of the sector, the logistics sector being a critical enabler of RMG's next level of journey, what is BGMEA doing about it, in terms of working with the government, foreign investors, private sector in the country? What are BGMEA's actions or strategies in developing this sector?
Yeah, as I said, the BGMEA is working for the railway, Benapul border, then all land port border. BGMEA is working very closely. I think the port chairman also knows that we went to visit with the entire BGMEA board, went to visit the Chittagong port to see what is happening there. How can we improve? We took our customers like H&M, Marks and Spencer together along with us. How we all can work together to improve our service. It's not us only, it is the country and how all the stakeholders. In fact, the CNF agents were also brought into our meeting. That you tell us what your problem. We will, on behalf of the BGMEA, we will try to reduce or solve the problem. We cannot solve, we can bring it to the concerned authorities. And I think I have answered the other part of the thing, that for the raw materials input, we have done a lot of things, especially from India, because we have land borders. BGMEA has done significant, and is trying to do, I won't say done, is trying to do significant improvement in bringing those materials, because 35% growth, which we have made, the raw materials has also increased. The volume has increased over there too. And there we are involving ourselves. Thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you make a very good point. You made several very good points, Mr. Ashraf, but this last point, that of course the country is going to thrive based on an export-led growth strategy. So we have to make export diversification, greater competitiveness of RMG an easier path. But we must not forget about our imports as well, because many of our raw materials or inputs to manufacturing, including export manufacturing, are imported. So what we need is actually logistics for trade, efficient logistics infrastructure, operation, and system, backed by the right policy and regulatory framework, which work for the entire trade space. The 8th five-year plan, while it aims to improve or expand export by 70%, it also aims to expand import by 65%. So we can't only keep things in mind from an export perspective, which is the main driver, but the import is intrinsically linked. Thank you. And you also make another very good point, about this Turkey example that you used. I guess Mexico is the equivalent example for the US, as Turkey is for the EU. COVID has, or lessons during COVID is actually leading to certain shifts in the global production system. And one of that shift is nearshoring. Basically, large markets are trying to bring production centers, if not to their border, within their borders, but at least as close to their border as possible. So, EU moving as much as possible to Turkey, their production, US moving as much as possible to Mexico. So Bangladesh really has to offer even better value proposition in terms of competitiveness. And that's where logistics comes into play. So thank you, Mr. Ashraf. So with that, let me now, do you want to say something, Mr. Ashraf?
No, I suggest, thank you very much. And also, we don't forget the LDC valuation. That is another big challenge for us.
When we lose the GSP facility, as of now, it's meant to go in 2029, 3 years after the graduation. Average tariff is going to be between 8 and 11% on our exports into European Union markets. Now, how do you offset that added cost of Bangladesh, importing products from Bangladesh? One of the way is to certainly reduce the high cost of logistics that exporters and businesses incur while operating from Bangladesh. So that is a great segue to actually go to a foreign business, which is a critical part of Bangladesh's RMG and export success, the largest buyer of Bangladeshi export goods and RMG goods, H&M. We have the country manager, Mr. Ziaur Rahman from H&M, and I'm privileged to sit at the same panel with Zia Bhai in second time in 5 days. So Zia Bhai, H&M is a large global company with operations in many countries. It sources its largest part of the products from Bangladesh, which is also about 10% of Bangladesh's exports. Now, how do you see Bangladesh's logistics capacity and procedures as it stands now in comparison to other countries that H&M sources from, right? And how do you think Bangladesh can strengthen the logistic process, the sector, including the regulatory areas, to make it even more attractive for a global company like H&M? Zia Bhai, over to you.
Thank you so much, Masrur Bhai. I think it's a pleasure to work with you. Yeah, a great meeting twice in 5 days. I think it's a great question. Before I go to answer you directly, let me tell you our journey in Bangladesh. We started roughly around almost like 30 years ago. So it was a smaller buyer we were buying from Bangladesh. Considering there to now, I think we experienced a lot in this country. And we are very happy that we become part of the growth of this country. So that's one thing. We saw our port were not working. So from there, the way we see today, a big thanks to our port chairman. So I think it's going well, really, really well, comparing where we are. To connecting that, to answer you, I think our BGMEA colleague, Mr. Asif Bhai, already mentioned a couple of things, that how long it takes a truck from less than a 300 kilometer. So that's one thing. And because in the logistic, I think the time is the biggest factor here. If I see that our suppliers make a cartoon, they already ship garments, let's say. And from there, the time from the port, the goods is really, really sailing. In between, you are talking about some cases more than a week. Well, we have a port running really great, but the connecting to the port and to the next of the other bureaucratic, all the channel, and then all the traffics and others. I think we have a lot of things to do, no doubt about it. If you talk about policy, yes, policy will help us a lot. If you look at our competitors countries, if you look at the countries who bring a lot of success in the logistics, I think the railway brings a big success. Unfortunately, we don't have one from railway, but if I see that we have the connection from Dhaka to Chittagong, even inside the Chittagong port, they have a connection as well. It could be great. We have a CFS somewhere in Dhaka, let's say, because the industry is heavily in Dhaka. If you talk about RMG, that brings a lot of saving on the time, and then obviously potentially money as well. And then we talk a lot about our carbon emission. Then that's a great efficiency you're talking about. And if I look back to the other competitions that I used to have with my counterpart, let's say, and then I think in the earlier session, my colleague from Stockholm said it very clearly. We still talk about a scanner in Dhaka airport. I think we should stop talking about it. We just buy it, install it, it should run. That's it. We should even have 2-3 scanner as a backup. So we should not even talk about it, because I don't think we have, the maturity is already there. So it's just something, very small things should be done. And then if you talk about, we have another port, Mongla, which is, we tried some actually 6-7 container to try from there as well. Now we see a great success of the country. The Podda Breeze is coming up. So we are in a process talking with our partners. How can you do have a CFS over there? Well, you can ask a question that if Chittagong is running, why you need it? How long we should put all eggs in one basket. So that's one thing. At the end of the day, it's all about Bangladesh. So we can bring that, but we are so happy to see this construction of the, the Bay Terminal and Pothinga Terminal. It will bring a lot of capacity. We're very excited about it. And then the deep sea port, I think I wish it happened even faster, because then the mother vessel will come. The logistic time, what Ashraf Bhai, Asif Bhai already mentioned, that geographically our position versus Turkish position, we can't do anything about it. But these are the small things we can bring, can be a game changer. So when I meet with my counterpart, let's say the people that we compete for the orders for Bangladesh, these are the small things comes in the picture. We ship a garments from there to sell a garments a week. We can turn that absolutely maximum 2 to 3 days probably. And many countries is doing that. If you look at even Shanghai, a lot of production happening up in the north. From there, in just 2 days, the cargo, they just start sailing. So there is possibility, and port is functioning really well. So if you can connect the dots, I think we have a huge potential to do a lot of things here. And before I stop, I must say that the next decade, the biggest need is the carbon emission, working with the recycle and working with the circularity, all others. I think in the logistics, the sustainability is super important. So whatever we do here, we should not forget about it. The question is, what is costing us? If it costs our life, if it's costing our future, probably is that the logistic we want? I'm sure we don't want that. So I think whatever we do now, we do together with the sustainability. I'm going to stop it here.
Thank you, Ziaur Bhai. I think really sort of intriguing to hear from the country head of a global brand, a global giant in apparel, which sources not only its largest from Bangladesh, but also is the largest buyer of Bangladesh's exports. And when you say the time is really important, I think it just adds, sort of next level of, weight emphasis on the issue that already emphasized by Mr. Abul Kasem Khan, Mr. Asif Ashraf on behalf of the local private sector, that how important this particular sector is, and that for that matter, how urgent for Bangladesh it is to develop this sector. I think you also bring in a very important issue of, how do you make better use of different parts of the country, new infrastructure such as Padma Bridge, which is going to connect the southwest of Bangladesh, as well as the second port, Mongla port, which has made a greater room for usage improvement and efficiency improvement. I think logistics will be the answer to that, integrated logistics. But I think same thing will also apply for some of the other new ports that are coming up in Chittagong or being planned in Chittagong area. So thank you, Zia Bhai, for your remarks. So with that, let us now move to Mr. Jabbar, A Jabbar, Managing Director of DBL Group. Now, DBL itself is also one of the largest RMG exporter and textile group in the country. But we have heard, our last two speakers, last two panelists, were from the RMG sector, Mr. Asif Ashraf, BGMEA, and Mr. Zia from H&M. So though DBL has done tremendously well in RMG, DBL has recently also expanded into diversified sector, which is a great sort of phenomenon, because we need Bangladeshi conglomerates to actually help Bangladesh's economic diversification. And it's great to see DBL leading that from the forefront. So Jabbar Bhai, my question to you will be more from businesses that you are expanding into domestically, as well as the very important industrial infrastructure project that you are building or perhaps already operationalized, the Srihotto Special Economic Zones. As we know, special economic zones are now becoming the most important industrial policy tool for the country. So, DBL is a pioneer RMG. You are venturing into diversified sector, including in SEZs. Is the current logistics system and the procedure, including the regulatory framework, sufficient to support your planned growth across the country and internationally for your diversified sector and for the efficient operation of SEZs? If not, what are the improvement areas that you see? Jabbar Bhai, over to you.
All right, thank you, Masrur. Well, NCCI has organized this event today. I think it's a very important and timely initiative. When Bangladesh, we are sitting in between the crossroad of huge prospect and same time challenge, and also looking forward to we are like our neighboring country, competition from neighboring country. So everybody is working for it. And as Mr. Jia just mentioned, this is a carbon and carbon tax. That could be one of the challenge, and one of the challenge that would be also that we do require will be taxation, and that also LDC graduation. And where the garments industry is looking at $100 billion export by 2025, and it has capacity. So what I see that are not considering only the garments and textile, and Bangladesh is also coming up with the pharmaceutical, ceramic and other sectors, and also light engineering. So we have all this opportunity. So this is the right time that we must have to focus on the different segment. One of the key segment is that logistic. So logistic, and here is our port efficiency has a big contribution in our logistic cost. So I see that, this is in the coming days, how we can improve. Yeah, this is, we heard we have a lot of achievement in port handling and container handling, but thing is, how about you thinking the economic growth 3-4 fourfold? Are we ready for that? But I see that, the international investors are coming, and very recently we see a lot of international interest is on Bangladesh. And previously we see that, this interest was been to other countries as well, but they could not succeed, as such as we can see. But it only depends on us. At this moment, I see we have to, the next 5 years, we have to work together day and night in terms of policy, in terms of looking at all the segment, how we could be competitive. Competition is the key. So in logistics, there is also transportation is a key factor. So transportation, we just cannot rely on the road. We have to work on the riverways, and also train, as Jia mentioned. All the economic zones should be connected with the railroad. And we have to have that proper dredging in the river so we can transport, we can reduce our transport cost. And keep it in the mind, like not where are we? We don't have to be happy that where are we or what we have done. We have to look at the future in 5 years. Whatever, however, geopolitical or after COVID math, Bangladesh had got the opportunity. Other countries also looking at the same, how they can achieve things. So we see we have the opportunity, but we cannot just dream on it. And if I come back to the port again, this is where the mouth is, where all the import goods are coming, raw materials are coming and going out exported through the port. So I see that here is a huge, I see, this is a huge area to improve. This is like a customs, bonds, CNF agent, and transport agencies should be work together, should be in a transparent way, so we can reduce a lot of time. And this capacity building is also very important. And that we have the existing people, professionals, we have to train so that we can, with our timing, our efficiency. And also a need here, we need the leadership. Here, I think we must work in our position. We all connect to each other. And it's a very good opportunity. Now we have platforms, associations, international community are there, everything. So and government is willing to connect. So everything is here. This is how we meet today. So, we should not miss the boat. We see everything is clear that Bangladesh can grow many folds. So this is what I see. What we are doing now, we should not be happy for that. We should look at the challenges. We should compare to other countries, how they are achieving. And we see that also achievement done by the other market, other country, we can replicate. And I see a lot of good practice being replicated to other countries from Bangladesh. Why not we bring the good practice, good policy from other? So this is not the time for sitting around, and our especially export diversification has huge possibility, even in the governments. To me, whatever we have invested in backward linkage, I think it is possible in last 25, 30 years. I think that could be same, even more possible to invest in next 5 years. So I think that, and I see it is clear. This is, you are hearing from me, I see probably things what we can do. Probably we have this opportunity, but we really act now. So I think this, we thank that the opportunity came to us. We should honor it, we should use it. And we have our development partner and knowledge partner around us. We can work together and make it happen and make Bangladesh is, this is as our government wants, that middle income country, we are LDC, and then the a rich country or fast country, and everything is possible. So in policy side, infrastructure side, and our capacity building, everything should go hands on hand. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jabbar. I'd like to ask you for a 60-second response into a question which has to do with logistic being also an investment opportunity for Bangladesh private sector. Now, I ask you that particular question because DBL Group has set tremendous examples of venturing into new sectors. You are even in semiconductor space in the country, right? Now, logistics, while Bangladesh needs the sector to develop hugely, the sector itself is also a great investment opportunity for local and foreign private sector. According to PwC estimate, the current logistics investment need is about $15 billion. Just $1 to $2 billion is only in temperature control logistics, TCL. Is there any particular law, regulation, or regulatory issue that you feel that can improve or reform itself in order for entrepreneurs like you to come and invest in logistics sector? So if you can respond in 1 minute.
Well, like, I can remember the early days, like for how policy helped Bangladesh. So 25% incentives in backward linkage and for the government sector. So that really, led us to invest in backward linkage, where we are ahead of even Vietnam. What we have in backward is in textile. So I think that it still is a possibility here. And I see the government is welcoming. All thing is trust and this. And you see, there is a lot of time you see the mistrust. I think that there 1 or 2 incidents cannot make should not prevent from the policy adaptation. So I see that, this is as per your question, that is, I see that a project and policy that will definitely encourage us, and definitely we can talk through our platforms, and I think so. I think is that, make it answer.
I think you respond. You respond to the question to a great extent. I think what you emphasize on is continued public-private and development partner collaboration, and also the importance of, which you also mentioned a few minutes ago, the importance of having the platform to take forward this dialogue from which the policy actions and the policy reforms do take place. So thank you, Mr. Jabbar, for your very exciting, very important remarks that you have mentioned. With that, let us now turn to our last panelist, last but by no means the least. He's the only regulator, or also to some extent a policymaker in the panel. So we are all eagerly waiting to hearing from him. Admiral Shahjahan, it's so great to have you again with us. So I recall the session we had, there was a closed door session virtual back in September with the Honorable Advisor to Prime Minister on investment, the Shipping Secretary, yourself, the PPP CEO, on development of the new ports in Chittagong. And you made some very encouraging remarks there, and we can see great follow-up actions of that. And today you have heard the private sector, both the local and the foreign private sector operating in the country, who are in critical need of the logistics sector being developed further so that it can support Bangladesh's growth aspirations. We have heard about the urgency in terms of time. We have heard about the key drivers or key events that would have an implication on the competitiveness, such as post-LDC graduation challenges. We have heard about the lead time, or the time being, time to deliver or time to transport being a challenge for Bangladesh, particularly as we try to access European Union, Europe, and North American markets. But we at the same time know that the Chittagong Port Authority and the Ministry of Shipping are taking some excellent initiatives. We know about the very important Bay Container Terminal development that is progressing. As we understand, you have already tested the bulk port in Matabari, and of course we know about the deep sea port plan. But what is with that, I think what is also going to be important is that the country has a national logistics vision, either backed by a policy or a national strategy, as Vietnam has, as India is moving into, which also brings in the countrywide integrated logistics development, trade transportation, warehousing, storages, and many other elements of the logistics services. So we would like to hear from you about how you see this whole issue being addressed by the government of Bangladesh, where Chittagong Port Authority is an important player, but also We have other ministries like roads and bridges. We have railways, but we also have the PPP authority, and most importantly, the Prime Minister's office itself, which is taking great interest in developing the policy as well as follow through in terms of many actions. So over to you, Admiral Shahjahan.
Thank you very much. First of all, let me thank the Nordic Chamber of Commerce and Industries for inviting me in this special session. It's really a very timely and very important topic to discuss about. And as you know, Chittagong, not Chittagong, I will say about the seaports or ports of the Bangladesh as a whole. The ports are the main transition place for the international for the maritime transportation, and the 98% of the maritime trade, 92% of the export import is through the Chittagong port, and rest is through other seaport and the land port and the airport of the countries. And out of this 92%, 98% of the containerized cargo is through the Chittagong port, and rest around 2% is through Mongla port. And the another port is coming up, that is Paira port, that is yet to start their journey. However, they have started their journey with the bulk cargo only for their particular purpose of their just handling the coal for the coal-based power plant over there. And another port is coming up, that is, as you know, the Matarbari Deep Sea Terminal, which is coming under Chittagong port, and Bay Terminal is coming under Chittagong Port Authority. As you know, government is developing number of SEZ and EZ in the all over the country, more than 100. And the country is becoming very agile in terms of investment, both in local and the foreign direct investment. And the industries are coming up in the all this in the SEZ. And to support all these SEZ and all the export and import activities, we definitely need the port support. And port has to increase their capacity and efficiency simultaneously so that we can address the growth of the country. As you know, our GDP growth is before the pandemic, it was around 8%, and now it is again it is going up. And the growth of Chittagong port is last year it was 13% in an average. You know, so the growth of the Chittagong port is almost double than our GDP growth. So we have to accommodate all this growth through this Chittagong port. As you know, the Chittagong port is the principal one, and majority of our cargo is transporting through this port. So that's why Chittagong port is always trying to develop its capacity and also efficiency. Number one, you see, during the COVID period, we were working 24/7. However, during that period, we had to sacrifice our 52 lives, you know. But at the cost of those lives, today I acknowledge their sacrifice, and we pray for the departed soul, for the salvation of the departed soul. During the COVID period also, Chittagong port did not stop for a single moment. And we had been working and had been supporting the maritime trade, and especially the export import cargo, both in terms of local and the foreign cargo. Especially, you see, during the COVID period, we had been working to develop the efficiency and develop the capacity. As you know, that during the COVID period, we tried to convert our liabilities into assets. That we thought that this, and the challenges into opportunities, and our problem into our potentials. You see, that COVID has shown us new path. It has forced us to change with the passage of time, and we had to follow different path as per the demand of the time. Earlier, what we had been doing, we are sending our cargo through the sub-regional, through the international hubs like Singapore, Port Kelang, and also through the Port of Colombo and Tanjung Palapas. But thing is that once the COVID was dictating, COVID was influencing and had an adverse impact on the hub, there is a delay as good as there are in some ports is 60 days, 10 days, 15 days to 60 days. But what we had to do, we had to continue our maritime trade. We had to continue our export and import activities. Then suddenly we found that this COVID is not a curse for us. It has bring some opportunities also for us. And we had to quickly we have to shift it direct service from Chittagong to European market, from Chittagong to Middle East, from Chittagong to Far East. So all this service we have developed out of this COVID problem which arose during this period. But subsequently, it is giving now us better dividend, and it has given us new horizon. You see, earlier the buyers, they used to employ a lot of some particular MLOs, feeder vessel operator, and obdocs for their particular cargo. But thing is that it did not work. They thought that it will give them better dividend. They are more efficient than others, so they will be giving them better service. But it didn't work. In return, it make the port congested. It made the total supply chain cumbersome. And in most of the cases, we found that the obdocs are getting choked, and the feeder vessel are coming and going with the empty slot. More as good as 30% of the slot was empty. And there is a container, and people are telling that there is no container. And people are telling that Chittagong port is congested. Chittagong port does not have container. Chittagong port does not have yard space. But I had enough. I had everything is on board. I had adequate number of container, empty container, and yard space, and the ships are also there. And ship is going with 30% empty slots. Then what we had to do? We had to call all the stakeholders. They come, and we have the solution. We have the prescription. You abide by that. What? You ask the buyer to ensure that they don't fix the off-docks, they don't fix the feeder vessels, they don't fix the MLOs. Ask them, make it open. Make it open for all, whatever the available container we have, what are the available ships we have, what are the available yard slot we have, we can use it. So we had to ask them to sign common carrier agreement among the feeder vessel operator and the direct interchange of container among the MLOs. And we asked them to make it open to use. We have 19 off-docks. They had been using only 5 or 6. So other off-docks had been, they were free. They had very less number of container to handle. And all these people had been working, that people are telling that you are working for buyer, or you are working for the MLOs, or you are working for the BGMEA or something like that. We said that no, we are not working for anyone. We are working for the global maritime transportation, so that our supply chain remain continue and our economy is not at halt. So we are working for the country's economy. We are working for the global maritime transportation, global supply chain. That was our aim. That was our vision. That was our objective, that to keep the supply chain continue. And for that, I give thanks to the all MLOs, all feeder vessel operators, or buyer, importer, and exporter. Everybody supported this decision, and they have accepted our prescription. And today, that's why you see in Chittagong port there is no congestion. More than 49% vessel is coming and entering in the port without any waiting time. And we need support from our user. You know, the user has to work with the Chittagong Port Authority. Not with the Chittagong Port Authority alone, on other port also. You see, during the Eid holidays, we had been working. Port was working 24/7, but our user, they did not came during last 9 days of holidays. So what happened? The container gets piled up inside the port, because in Chittagong port, only 37 types of cargo is being shifted to the off-docks. This is the only port in the world where the FCL cargo is being unstuffed. FCL and LCL, both cargo is being unstuffed and delivered to the user from the port premises itself. And only 37 types of container is going to the off-docks. And among the 37 types, most of the container is also handled inside the Chittagong port, because our user, they like to use Chittagong port facilities more than the other facilities. They think that port is more efficient than the other organizations. they are acknowledging that the port is the best possible location to use as the staging hub for their export and also for their import. But thing is that it is not the Chittagong port. It is everybody has to work together, not only the Chittagong port. Everybody, if we don't work, port includes all the stakeholders, not on the port authority. Port authority is a regulatory body. It works, it gives service. Port job is to provide best possible service to its user, not to make money. It is not our job to make money out of it. Obviously, we get some money. It is out of our freight, out of service, what we provide. And our tariff is cost-based tariff, it is not profit-based tariff. Now you see, what happened during the COVID period or in the normal time also, delays happens in the your international transshipment hub. That transshipment hub delay, it affects our port also. So the feeder vessel which are coming from the transshipment hub, they get a lot of problem. Because there is a delay in the transshipment hub, especially during the COVID period. And now you see the freight has increased to manifold. Earlier the freight was where the $2,500 US, now it is more than 16,000 US. So freight has gone up. So if we can use this common carrier agreement effectively, then if all the slot of the container feeder vessel is used, then the freight automatically it will come down. And in Chittagong port, our capacity is around 2,400 TEUs in each vessel, as the draft of the vessel is limited to 9.5 meter and length is 190 meter. So here we cannot carry more than 2,400 TEUs, even though the feeder vessel operator, they are not utilizing that opportunity also. What they are bringing vessel up to 1,800 TEUs, 1,900 TEUs. And now during the COVID, as bigger ships are absent, they could not hire the bigger ships. What they did, they have hired the smaller vessels. Vessel having 1,200, 800, 700 TEUs. So we had to accommodate them. We had to bring them in our year. And in the UN efficiency indicator index, the vessel, they have got index up to 1,500 TEUs. And they have got a particular time slot, that is more if it is within 48 hours, they said that is okay. But it is more than 48 hours, they said that the port is not efficient. But
Admiral Shahjahan, apologies for the interjection. So we are also hoping to have a discussion with the participants through the open floor session for next 5 to 7 minutes. So if I may humbly request you to wrap up in next 1 minute so that we can move to the open session where you will have opportunity to respond to questions, comments that come from the floor.
Yeah, you see, the Chittagong port is increasing its capacity in terms of container handling, in terms of yard space, in terms of jetty facilities. That's why Chittagong port is now developing the bay terminal. Once this bay terminal is developed, your vessel will be able to enter with around 12 meter draft and around 285 meter length, and the capacity of the ships will be around 5,000 TEUs. And in the bay terminal, the vessel will be able to come with 300 meter length and around 18 meter draft. And those vessels will be able to carry around 10 to 12,000 TEUs. So freight in terms of bay terminal, it will be reduced to around half, and in terms of bay terminal, Matarbari, it will be reduced to 1/3. So in that case, the port of Bangladesh will be more competitive than the port of this sub-region. And our vision is to make the Bangladeshi port as the sub-regional hub for this particular. Then if we can convert these ports into sub-regional hub, then we'll be able to convert the liabilities into asset. What presently we are paying in terms of demurrage and detention of the container and the ship, that will be in that case, we will be able to earn in terms of space rent for the container, and also the vessel will be coming here with more container and their time will be saved, and we will be able to be more competitive in the international market, and also our ease of doing business will be much better. And for that reason, we have to utilize all the road networks in terms of road, railway, and the waterways. And waterways being the cheapest, we have to use these waterways. And another important thing is that we have to go for more obdocks, and there is a ample scope of opportunity for the investment, both for local and the foreign investment for obdocks and the cold chain logistics. Presently in Bangladesh, there is no cold chain logistics obdocks facilities, and also there is no facilities for vehicular obdocks. So we can send the vehicle to the obdocks if there is any scope, and if the investors is there, it is a greenfield and there is no competitor still. So in these two particular cases, you can both foreign and the local investor can immediately go. And also for the renewable energy and also for the alternative energy, the port is the very nice place to invest, so that port can be green port, and also the Bangladesh, as it is a energy hunger country, and here we can go for the alternative energy like your liquid oxygen, which you can produce from the seawater, from the seawater, that it is a part of blue economy, and port is also a part of blue economy, and maritime transportation is also of that. So if we can go for the renewable energy and also the alternative energy sources, that is the best option. I think there our local and also the foreign investor can invest. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Admiral Shahjahan. Very encouraging words and insights from you. All the infrastructural plans that you mentioned, Bay Container Terminal, Deep Sea Port. Great to hear about the concrete plans moving forward, but also your point on private participation in delivering some of those services, I think, is of enormous importance in terms of bringing in global best practice and efficiency. So in the interest of time, I'd just like to sort of thank all the panelists for their excellent remarks, really important insights and encouraging words. I think with that, let me hand it over to Mr. Tari Naman, President of NCCI, for conducting the open session discussion for the next 7 to 10 minutes. It's been a great pleasure moderating this session. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. I will be assisting Masrur Bhai in repeating any questions my audiences will have. Let me start off with Tariq Bhai.
Good evening. My name is Ziaur Rahman. I'm from Swedish Motors, Volvo Trucks and Bus. Congratulations to the Nordic Chamber and also the Nordic embassies for their continuous support. And of course, the Executive Office, Masrur and Laviba. And it really makes me proud as an immediate past president to see Tarin doing so well. Thank you very much. Environmental care. Environmental care is one of the core value for the Nordic countries, and it's quite important. So my question is to Mr. Khan. When you're making the policies, are you looking into the emission level of the trucks which are operating, for example, from Gazipur to the port? And the amount of emission every day, there are thousands of containers moving every night, polluting the whole, cutting down Bangladesh from one end to another. So that is one question. There are quite a few solutions to reduce the carbon footprint. One is definitely to reduce the emission level of the vehicles. The other one is to have the articulated prime movers. One prime mover here carrying one container. Instead of that, a prime mover can carry 3 containers, which will reduce the cost, give lower carbon footprints, and also much competitive. So are there any emission factors in the policies? Thank you.
Thank you, Tariq Bhai. Over to you.
Yes, good question. We have an environmental segment on the framework, but the details we have not yet finalized. Obviously, we will be talking to all the stakeholders when formulating the final draft of the policy. But that's a very good point. We will take note of it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
This for the policy makers, those who are formulating the policy. To reduce the carbon footprint or carbon emission, we can reduce the carbon emission if we use the river route. Waterways is one of the very important sector. You see, nowadays our ships are plying with nearly 100 TEUs of container to the inland waterways. If a vessel is coming from Chittagong port to ICT Panga or maybe in the Muktarbal or maybe other inland container terminals, so you see, in one vessel, if you can bring 100 container, then in one container, once you unstuff, you need at least 3 trucks, 3 covered van. So if you use one vehicle, you can remove 300 trucks from the road. And if you remove 300 trucks, you can understand how much emission you can control. And on the other hand, the roads traffic jam would be reduced, and nowadays the roads are being deteriorated due to the overload cargoes. Big volume of cargoes are being transported by the surface transport. So if we can reduce this surface transport, we can increase the volume by waterways and also by the railway. Then our surface travel on the government will be able to save a lot of money in respect of repair maintenance of roads and bridges and culverts. And most importantly, if we go for waterways, now, presently it is not more than 2 to 3% is being carried by the waterways. But it is, I'm talking in terms of containerized cargo. But most of the bulk cargoes is being transported through the river. Our lighter vessels are using that. But for the trackers, for the containerized cargo, we are not using much in the waterways. So that in the policy, we can ensure that we can mention that the certain percentage of the cargo from the Chittagong port has to be to be used by the river routes, so that we can reduce the carbon emission. And subsequent, once the user are habituated with the river routes, they will not feel much discomfort. Why they don't want to go, because there are lack of infrastructure, there are lack of administrative facilities, there are lack of offices of the freight forwarder, shipping agent, and other custom facilities in the inland areas. So we can develop those facilities, and we can increase the number of container to be transported through the waterways. That can give us better dividend in terms of carbon emission and to reduce to increase the environment, to make the environment more congenial, more friendly. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Admiral Shahjahan. Yes, please go ahead.
Hello. One of the areas under the policy, Mr. Chairman rightly pointed out, waterways is a good alternative, and there is no balanced approach for Bangladesh's transport infrastructure. Mostly it's carried on road, we know why. But in the policy framework, we have gone through the Sagarmala policy of India, whereby there is a public-private system to develop ports in the private sector, because we have seen the failures of Pangao, and that discourages private investment in the port. Because Bangladesh, the dredging cost is about 60% of your operational cost. So what India has done, Indian government takes care of the dredging cost. So we have made a recommendation to the government that if the dredging is taken care of by the public sector, then the investment quantum for the private investor will be low. And the Sagarmala policy, which is a fantastic policy, and it's a very successful policy in India, whereby there is concessional land given to the private sector. The private sector is only responsible to build the hard infrastructure, the cranes and the concrete foundation. And the rest is built by the public sector. So those kind of initiatives, if we can take, I think that will offload a lot of traffic from the road to the waterways. Waterways is totally neglected. Even the rail sector is neglected. You have to go to the core of the problem of the road issues. There is a big, I would say, political economy behind it. So we have to manage and have, I would say, very structured policy framework in giving incentive to private sector and private investors to build those ports under the PPP framework. I would end here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Khan. We have another question from the audience.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm Fatima Anwar. I'm an independent legal practitioner, but I have been catering to this industry for quite some time, since 1998 now. So I have two policy considerations. It could be regarded as a query. I don't need an immediate response, but I would like to mention these as food for thought, something to take away from this discussion. One is that the caption, of course, is policies on the roadmap ahead. And the greater caption or the context is foreign direct investment in Bangladesh. And of course, the event is being held by the Nordic chambers. In that context, my question is, in the logistics sector, with regard to FDI, we have seen that the integrated logistics has always been envisaged ever since the rules that have come about since 2008. The recent past, however, has seen some serious cappings, and we all know that policy leads to regulations. And in those regulations, we have seen equity cappings for foreign investors who want to invest in Bangladesh. And those cappings have been taken very seriously, particularly in the sectors of setting up CFS or ICDs, or for the freight forwarders and logistics, even for shipping agents recently. And you see, some of the bigger brands would not want to be compelled into sharing equity in Bangladesh or going into joint ventures. So it is sometimes perceived as a deterrent more than anything else in coming and investing in Bangladesh. That is one perception. Of course, we understand the obvious reasons for these policies is to allow the local industry to grow and flourish. At the same time, the panelists have brought forward two very important aspects for the way ahead. One is more private sector investment, because the entire burden ought not to be put on the government. And the second, of course, is, as Mr. Jabbar very correctly pointed out, competition is the key. So what is actually the roadmap ahead in terms of these policies? Are we going to remain deterrent, or are we wrong in thinking that this is a discouraging factor? Thank you.
Anyone from the panel could take the question.
Well, thank you very much. In the private sector, investment is very encouraging in Bangladesh, you know, but we could not use it very effectively. The private sector, the port and shipping is one of the important sectors where they could invest very effectively. I would honorably disagree with one of my panelists, what he was telling, that the failure of ICT Pangaon. It was not failure of ICT Pangaon, but we could not use it effectively. Why we could not use it effectively? Let me give you statistics on that. This is me who has been working to make this ICT Pangaon effective since 2010. We had been working to make this network effective. From Chittagong port, we have purchased 3 reconditioned container vessels just to show path to our user that this is the path you can use it. And we made it happen, and Chittagong port itself operated these 3 vessels. But you see, port itself cannot go for a business. There, the private partnership has to, private entrepreneur has to come. And there was the time when 44 probably, if I am not wrong, license was issued to construct these sort of smaller vessels. So they have given, but the investor is very scared to go to this particular segment, particular operation. You see, there is no shortage of depth of water. There is no limited depth over there. If you can operate only 4-meter draft or 3.5-meter draft, vessel comes with 100 TEUs, a vessel can get the return by 3 years' time. The investment can get return by 3 years' time. It is, I have personally calculated the total ROI of this particular venture, because as I had been trying to buy this. I bought this 3 ship and I was operating this ship, and I've seen it is possible. But you see, why it was not happen? One container is coming from, for example, from Singapore. The freight is, for example, it is $1,600. It is, for example, they bring this cargo from Singapore to Chittagong port by $1,000, and from Chittagong to Pangaon or Dhaka, it is $600. You see, from Chittagong to Dhaka in Bangladesh, 70% container is Dhaka bound. Why? People are importing from Khatunganj, from Chittagong. The importer is from the Chittagong. He's importing cargo from outside the country, and he's taking delivery from Kamalapur. He's not taking delivery from Chittagong port or not from any other place. Why? That thing has to be answered. So people has to, if the importer is from the Chittagong, he has to take his cargo from Chittagong. Then why it is coming to up to Kamalapur? That thing has to be stopped. And you see, if you are bringing that container to Chittagong, to Dhaka, you are paying how much? You are paying around 30,000, 35,000 taka. And if you bring it by the river route, you pay $100 only. We have set the freight $100. If you bring it by $100, in 3 years' time, the whole investment will come back to your crude. But now thing is that, you see, the people are asking that final destination is up to Dhaka. So if we can make it that the final destination is up to Chittagong, then the river route is bound to flourish. The people, container will come, the main MLO will bring the cargo and put it in the Chittagong port or in the any other particular off-dock, and from there it will go through the river route to the Dhaka or maybe inland in other container depot. Their government has given permission in that time, probably 4 or 5 ICTs. There Muktarpul, then what is that one? Rupayan, and we had one, the ICT Pangaon. So all these things we could increase further. But that 100, for example, one MLO, he is taking $600 from the importer, but he is spending only $100. It could be done by only $100, and $600 and into 3.2 million TEUs, what we are handling in a year. So it is 600 into, it is almost $2 billion is going out of the country for this small route. So if we can make this route happen by the policy only, we, the policy maker, will set the policy, the container will come, the final destination will be in Chittagong, and from there it will further, it will go up by the waterways. Then this can change the whole economic activities, So I think we can make little bit modification in our policy, then we can do it. And once one can say that you can afford someone, but for the greater interest of the economy, sometimes we have to set some regulatory framework for the better interest. You see, you are losing $1.2 billion for this particular year, every year. If we could use our vessel or our trailer, then in that case we could keep that amount of money inside the country. They are using only $200 or $300, but rest they are taking back as their profit. But if it could have been, then we could do it, and we could make this money. Thank you.
Thank you so much. With all respect, it's a great opportunity to talk about it. I know for the sake of the time, I will not take very long time. We used to use Pangaon actually, and we stopped talking 2019. So that's why I thought that at least I share what exactly happened, what's our experience. In 1 year, we had to subsidize roughly around $250,000. We roughly use 40,000 TEUs in a year. So through that river terminal, our plan was 5 to 7%. We have to go somewhere around actually, we use that capacity. And for that, we pay this money. But the biggest challenge is not that because it's an investment, we talk about partnership. The biggest challenge, we talk about export, we use mostly the 40-feet container. and all our import come 20 feet. So that's an availability issue of the 40 feet. So if I need to use 40 feet containers, so from Chittagong, it comes an empty container with the cost of everything. This is where the extra thing. And then we have an operational challenge, and I'm sure that is much better today with your leadership, because when you ship from Pangao to Chittagong, we used to add another 1 more week just because it never gets priority in Chittagong. But that was, I'm talking about 3 years ago, not today. So that can be something to discuss here. But I'm really happy to hear this, actually. If this is a great option, I can say that from H&M side, because we even put a budget as a subsidy because to develop it, because it's simply sustainable. We talk about against all the carbon emissions and other thing. From our company side, we are ready to even talk about it because it makes our life easier. Those huge supply chain in Naranganj area, right? So the lead time become much more easier if you can solve it. Just I thought that is an opportunity to talk about it because before COVID we stopped actually 2019, and this is something we can even start if we see all the possibilities, and it can be a journey that okay, initially you share something, over the time the cost goes here, the sustainability goes, graph goes there. That could be something out of this. But thanks for mentioning it. It's a great discussion today.
You see, it is possible to sort of solve all this problem, what you said about the empties. If the container is coming, the flow is good, then port authority can give a lot of incentive to you. And maybe one buy two, one free, something like that. If you bring 2 containers, we can give you some sort of incentive that empty, we can give you a lot of subsidies. So, and moreover, you see, the 20 feet are more than the 40 feet containers, especially in terms of empties. So, while ships are going, your export are going, and ships are coming where import is coming. So, export is less than the import. So, in that case, what we can do, we can put the empties on the vessel to reduce the slot. And if we take, for example, 50 laden container, and if we take 50 empty container, then in that case, we would be able to give you a lot of incentive in that particular case. The incentive can be discussed upon.
I think, thank you so much. I think it's a great discussion, and we can vouch it in our next,
And from BGMEA's Honorable Chairman, we can be a part of it, because this is something that we really want to do. Most of the containers, I think, I won't say most, majority of the containers comes for the RMG industry. So if we can take this delivery from in Pangao, that will also help Mr. Zia's problem of 20 feet and 40 feet.
There is little bit problem about the custom clearance probably somewhere, because my users are giving me a lot of complaint about that. But if we can reduce that problem, I think the customs can help us better to make this terminal operational, because if somebody is bringing cargo to the ICD Komlapur, he can bring it to the ICD Pangao also. And sometimes people says that the road between the Pangao to the Dhaka city, and it is little congested. That can be solved by the government. You see, we are making Padma Bridge, we have made a lot of big roads. Then we can expand that road also.
Yeah, one of the issues is that actually we ship on the frag end of the shipment date. So if we do that in the Pangao, and where in Chittagong port where we have no control, I mean the shippers have no control, I mean the factories have no control, then there's a chance of shutout, and that is a very big risk to us. Maybe that something is stopping us to go with
Well,
that.
we took that on our shoulder, actually. This is where we say that we always add 1 more week. We practice this subsidy, actually. I put this budget, actually. I would say that for 3 years we did it. But then we saw, okay, it's not really going, because over the time, the carbon emission should,
Reduce.
it reduce, and the cost should go down, basically, because of the efficiency and other. But it didn't work because of this handling of the container availability.
I think if I remember properly, there was another issue of handling the transportation of movement of the containers from the inland vessels to the feeder vessel,
Yes.
right? It has to be unloaded to the land, and then again
I think this
that
is
if you can do
potential
something.
something we can
Yeah.
carry it further.
Maybe,
because-
Chairman, if you take the lead, BGME, H&M, I'm sure we can onboard few more customers
Thank you.
together and
Thank
make it
you,
happen.
thank you.
Thank you so much for your
This
effort.
is the very important thing, you know. This should be the cooperation between both the stakeholders. So as we are coming forward, if you come forward, then if number of containers is more, then you'll see the freight will come down. Because I have done my calculation personally, in 3 years' time, the price of cost of your investment will come back. You can return on investment is 3 years' time. So it is a very profitable venture, but one has to stick to that. And as a port authority, as a regulatory body, as a policy maker of the Chittagong port, I can give you that policy support.
We have, thank you. We have just enough time for 2 more questions from the audiences. I will start with Mr. Meerul Bhai from DHL Express, and then after that we'll go to Fatima Appa.
Thank you. Thanks, honorable panelists. I'll for the interest of the time, I'll go straight to the question, and it's about trade facilitation agreement. So it's about the policy. I'm sure we all are aware that it has 12 articles, and this is a very, very critical component of any cross-border trade globally for any country. And Bangladesh is a signatory of it since 2017, so it is binding on us because of the being signatory. Now, often we refer some of the implementation, even today's discussion, we saw that we are talking about national single window implementation, which is actually Article 10.4. And I am also very happy to see that some of the Articles 7.3, which is about separation of release, or advanced ruling, which is again Article 3, those are being implemented in Bangladesh, okay, by the declaration of the National Board of Revenue. Now, on the other hand, say, even 10.4, which is single window, requires a long list of prerequisites to reach there, okay? Like, say, risk assessment, which is Article 7.4, similarly, authorized economic operator, which is Article 7.7. So now, my question is that, are we considering the implementation of TFA as part of the national logistics policy to avoid such situation, what we see for things like Asikuda, which is UNCTAD solution, but even after years of implementation of Asikuda, we still only alone us, we print and copy over 3 million pages per year. So how do you want to integrate the TFA implementation as part of the national policy for logistics? Thank you so much.
Due to the time constraint, I would request the panel members to take 60 seconds to answer this question. My apologies. Anyone can answer this question. Please go ahead.
Well, this is a matter of basically the customs matter. The NBR is looking after about that. The Asikuda, even the port authority does not have direct total control on the Asikuda. We have the only read-only option. We can see only, but we cannot do anything. But it is a matter of customs and NBR. If you please contract with them, they will be able to help you out. And as you are taking print out from that, if you could get the direct, complete access on that, that could help you out. But thing is that they don't allow till today. But probably as the demand of the user will be mounting on them, gradually, obviously they will consider, they will see how much they can share with you. And all the users are not being given access to that. So that I really acknowledge that there is some thing to be worked out. Then, and you know, in Chittagong port, the activities in different sort of problem which arises due to the customs related activities. For example, there is not adequate number of inspector, not adequate number of chemists to test some particular equipment. They take long time and they are sending it to some other organization. But thing is, they are also trying to engage new your chemist and other inspector. But it will take some time. But at the same time, we have to have direct contract with the NVR and the customs. You have to continuously knock their door so that they also feel sometimes that, yes, obligated then now we have to do something.
Thank you.
So our user, basically the business community, they also can ask this access to them, whatever possible they will give you. But thing is that there is something to avoid the malpractice in the customs clearance, they are also a little bit apprehensive. That's why they don't give 100% access to them. So something they can do for you, I think.
Thank you so
you can
much.
approach to them.
Thank you. Going back to Fatima Appa for our last question.
Yeah, my apologies, sincere apologies. I could have asked it in the first instance. Since it is visible for everyone that I did not receive an answer to my first question, I am assuming that you are all taking it home as food for thought. The second question or the second point I'm directing directly to Mr. Khan, because I think he's the only one here who would be able to make a difference. This is related again to logistics, again to the stakeholders who are here today. And we have seen, this is also a policy consideration. It relates to Chapter 8, Paragraph 8 of Forex Guidelines. I do not see anyone from Bangladesh Bank here, but the direct consignee issue has been and will continue to be a major deterrent in trade unless that is looked into and aligned with international trade practices. That is something that perhaps there is a tiny little difference or tiny amendment we have seen coming in 2018. That is a fax message that goes faster will suffice for the documents, transport documents. I do not think that is sufficient. That is, of course, my opinion. And also the reason why that was put in the first place in the ancient Forex guidelines was to protect our local exporters from losing out on the proceeds of sale by rogue buyers. I do not think in the context of the current international trade practices globally now, that is any more relevant. So I am not expecting an answer anymore. I do want you to keep that in mind when framing your policies, because integrating Bangladesh Bank and NBR and customs and, of course, everyone else, I think the regulators need to remove the invisible China walls that exist. Otherwise, we won't see progress. Thank you.
Mr. President, if I may say one word about
Please, yes.
I think there is still the customers who do not pay. So we cannot endorse the blank BL to them. I think you are mentioning that thing, if I understand properly, right? Direct consignee is the same thing.
But there has to be some middle point, because you see, when buyers are looking at trying to bypass that particular provision where you have to make the AD, the exporter AD, the exporter AD, the consignee on the transport document, on the title document, sometimes that can be a deterrent also. And buyers look to sort of bypass that through means that are not regulatorily compliant. So maybe we can work on something that would be more, that would be a middle way where the exporters would be protected, as well as making it easier and more aligned with the UCPDC and other international regulations. It is something that needs to be worked on.
Convinced.
Because
I'm not very convinced because these,
you are the exporter.
Yes, because Bangladesh Bank is so strict about us. The foreign exchange regulation is so rigid about us. Anything that doesn't come, I can mention one example. We had an EXP payment less, about $5,000. For that, the cash incentive is stopped. So Bangladesh Bank is very, very rigid on the exporters. So we cannot take those chances. Anyway, it's my opinion.
No, but then, as I said, this has to be holistic. I pointed out one deterrent, but the change has to be holistic, obviously keeping everyone's interests on board. Thank you.
Now, on the first question, on the investment side, just to give you some background, Bangladesh needs about $20 billion a year in infrastructure investment with logistic part of it. So we from the private sector always are talking with the government and saying, where will this investment come from? It has to come from foreign investors and local investors. And I know what you're referring to about the limitation on certain sectors. We are in discussion with the government, and when we are framing the policy with the stakeholders, obviously. We will bring these up because we want, as a Bangladeshi or as a private sector individual, we want faster expansion of the economy to open up, because one thing policy planners need to understand, the window of opportunity of Bangladesh is not going to last forever. So we have to use the best use, as Mr. Jabbar rightly pointed out. The window may shut down. We cannot be complacent. So all these national policies that we are envisioning is for the greater interest of Bangladesh, so that the window of opportunity is grabbed by the private sector and for the betterment of the people of Bangladesh. So definitely we will work towards that and bring in more FDI and investment, local and foreign. So thank you.
Thank you. This concludes our Q&A session.
I will just take
Please, go
1
ahead.
minute time.
Yes.
1 minute. Just before concluding, just I want to say, I want to put forward the new business opportunity towards our investors, both for the foreign investors and also for the local investors. You know, our Honorable Prime Minister, she has given all the policy support to the port authorities of Bangladesh. And she has given all the support to develop the port infrastructure and also both port facilities, also equipment and other things. You see, the development of deep sea port, it will open new opportunity for the business community. It's once this port is the transshipment hub, then what will happen? That there will be new business feeder service between Matarbari to Chittagong, Matarbari to Pangaon, Matarbari to Paira, Matarbari to Mongla, Matarbari to Kolkata, Haldia, Matarbari to Yangon and other surrounding ports. So who is going to do this business? It is the business community. So you have to prepare yourself for 2026 from now onward. The once Matarbari is in place, you have to go for this business. Otherwise, we will have a lot of difficulties. So we have to prepare from now onward so that we can go for feeder vessel operation from Matarbari to other ports of the country, especially Chittagong, Mongla, and Paira.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. This concludes our Q&A session within the audience. Masrur bhai, if the time allows, I would like to make a comment or a statement. Yes? Okay. I just want to say that, Asif bhai, you have talked about post-LDC, it's because the panel is heavy on textile, so I'll be talking in perspective of textile. Post-LDC, there will be a cost increase in exporting to Europe. On top of that, utility cost, power cost is increasing. It has increased, and it may increase even more. Labor cost will increase. So all of these added cost, how do we mitigate this added cost and still be globally competitive? My apologies. So all of these added cost, you know, post-LDC export to Europe cost, power cost is going up, labor cost is going up. How do we mitigate all of this cost and still be competitive in the global market? It's only through being efficient in logistics. And this is exactly why we have initiated today's event on FDI in logistics, so we can bring all the stakeholders, government agencies, and domestic and international investors and talk about what issues we have and how we can manage it. So I thank you all for being a part of this event, and we hope to do more of like this. Thank you. Back to you, Masrur bhai.
Thank you, everyone. I think it was a fantastic session, the longest. So with that, I would like to thank Dr. M. Masrur Reaz for the lively panel discussion, and I would also like to show sincere gratitude to Rear Admiral Mohammad Shahjahan, Asif Ashraf, Director BGMEA, Abul Kasem Khan, A Jabbar, and Ziaur Rahman. Thank you, everyone, for the session. Please stay on the stage for a group photo, and can I request the Nordic ambassadors and President of Ncci Tahrir Naman to join for the group photo. Can I also request the EU ambassador to join for the group photo? Can I also request Mahbubur Rahman, CEO HSBC, on this stage for the group photo? Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the very last session of our day-long program. You might be wondering what is this session is. It's the closing session. In the closing session,